You've wasted my time, your time, and you really wasted the time of that guy you killed because of your petty jealousy.
And the burning question, my friends, what makes a love toxic? Well, there are many factors, right? It would be very difficult for me to come here and talk specifically about each of them in this video. So, I'm going to focus on a specific type of love that will help me discuss this topic, which I briefly mentioned in a previous video, and that's mania love. This is one of the types of Greek love, just like eros, which would be the more carnal and passionate love, philia, which is love for a true and lasting friendship, or agape, for example, which would be unconditional love. But forget about those because today we're going to look at that harmful love, that toxic love that grabs you with one hand and with the other strips away your self-love and self-respect. And this is mania love. It's quite interesting that the word mania is used as the name for this type of love because nowadays it means something like a bad habit or a harmful addiction, which already connects well with this kind of love. But it gets even more interesting if you look at the origin of this word in ancient Greek, which would mean something like a state of madness. So, you can already get an idea of what they meant by calling it that. Mania love is that unbalanced and harmful kind of love. Now that you know a little more about this type of love, close your eyes, think about regular show, and tell me which relationship in that cartoon best fits the description I gave to help me make this video. Did you think of one? Need more time? Well, let's get into the episode. Mordecai rejected Rigby's invitation to go to the movies because he wanted to invite Margaret to watch a movie he didn't even care about, and that was terrible. Mordecai's attitude was obviously desperate because if a person puts someone else above respect for themselves, do you think anyone else will be prioritized in that person's life other than the one they place on a pedestal? No. Rigby then makes Margaret laugh naturally just by being himself, which makes Mordecai extremely jealous and at the same time very angry. These emotions reflect his inner frustration of not being able to win Margaret over naturally, always having to pretend to be something he's not. And when he sees a guy like Rigby, whom he didn't think was capable of doing something like that, doing exactly that, there's no way. It's a mix of anger, confusion, and jealousy. Margaret then says she's moving, and Mordecai instantly offers to help her with ulterior motives. We see him doing this many times throughout the show, always doing favors that he would hate to do for anyone else but Margaret. He does this because sometimes people who really want to start a relationship with someone unconsciously create this point system in their heads, where doing something difficult and unpleasant for that person will earn them a point. At a certain point, after accumulating enough points, this person will finally notice how they've always been there for them, and then they'll finally get together. But of course, life doesn't work that way. Rigby then offers to help as well, just to mess with Mordecai, because he felt a bit abandoned and rejected when his friend ditched him to go out with Margaret. Rigby then accuses Mordecai of being jealous because he can talk to Margaret so easily, but Mordecai completely refuses to admit it because he doesn't want to believe it himself. Admitting this fact would also mean admitting that he was frustrated with the whole situation, and he couldn't talk to girls like Rigby could, which really unsettled him and made him quite irritated. When he has a perfect moment to ask her out, he just can't do it because he has such a strong lack of self-love and self-esteem. This results in immense fear and insecurity that prevents him from asking her a simple question. This is the fault of the mania love he feels for her, which makes him put Margaret on a pedestal as if she were the most perfect being in the world, and that he needs her to be happy. This only makes things worse because the higher he places Margaret, the smaller he feels next to her. Mordecai then accuses his friend of ruining his chances with Margaret, but we know that's not true. Even though Rigby was indeed causing some trouble, the one actually ruining his chances was Mordecai himself. Rigby then says that Mordecai will end up going to the movies with him in the end, and to be honest, he wasn't wrong. Those who watched the episode know this. Rigby's comment also indicates that at the start, his intention behind doing all of this was just to make sure Mordecai would go to the movies with him instead of Margaret. That's why he was causing trouble, which, despite having a reason, is still a selfish attitude. However, when Rigby asks Margaret out just to prove that it was something easy to do, his intentions shift from simply getting Mordecai to go to the movies with him to teaching Mordecai a lesson and forcing him to admit that he was feeling jealous. There's also a bit of revenge there for being rejected at the start. Rigby then starts acting like a jerk, provoking Mordecai every chance he gets until the time of the date. This behavior was to be expected from him since, at the beginning of the show, Rigby acted extremely childish and was oblivious to how people felt about the things he did. In reality, he didn't care about the date. He just wanted to upset Mordecai, and he succeeds, perhaps too much. Mordecai gets so angry that he takes all the clocks in the house and shoves them in the microwave without a care. And once again, again denies that he was jealous, even though at that point it was written all over his face. Putting the clocks in the microwave ends up sending the two of them through space. In the end, it's just a show, my friend. Once again, Mordecai accuses Rigby of ruining everything, to which Rigby replies that he just wanted to watch a movie with his friend, who ditched him to go out with a girl who didn't even know he existed. And we realize that this truth hurt Mordecai a lot. At that moment, he had two options: accept the truth and realize that things didn't have to go this far, or get even more irritated. Of course, he chose the latter. He shoves Rigby and ends up killing him. Even though it wasn't Mordecai's intention to kill Rigby, he did it, all because of a girl. Mordecai then ends up in this bizarre place. If you want to know how someone who experiences mania love feels about themselves when they're not around the person they desire, just look at where Mordecai is, completely empty, with nothing around. He then talks to a being called Father Time, who basically acts as Mordecai's conscience, questioning him and making him rethink everything he did that led him to this void. This being reminds him of how he wasted his own time, and the time his best friend still had because of his terrible actions and because of the moment he chose not to be honest about what he was feeling, thus avoiding the responsibility of being truthful with himself and others. Even so, Mordecai kept denying that he was jealous until the very last moment he could, even after everything that had happened. It was only when Father Time made him look at all of his actions with his own eyes that he finally stopped being blind and realized how wrong he had been in the end. He then admits that he was jealous and is given a second chance. However, when he goes back in time, he once again tries to make Margaret laugh by being someone he's not, which shows that he still had a lot to learn. But at least this time, he admits to Rigby that he was jealous. So, in the end, this episode portrays very well what toxic love is and how it can destroy us and others. Don't look for someone to complete you because, in the end, you might find yourself lost in the void. Look for someone who helps you complete yourself and who you can help to do the same. Does that make sense? Well, I hope it does.